Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What you are about to read is a story of a great man whose uprising has no like in the chronicles of history. A revolution with goals must sublime. A victory must profound. And at its core, a pronouncement of reform over conquest. The story of Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet of Islam, and his everlasting standing. There are many tales of heroism and stand-up bravery, yet none as significant and eternal as that of a man who lived in a world much like our own, but in an age long ago. When virtue is overrun by vice, with the people taking sides and restoring to force as a means for implementing their corrupt ideas, the call for change cannot be greater, and change whose goals transcend the plight of nations and encompasses the renaissance of all people. 1400 years ago, an exceptional man faced a similar situation. He was denied his basic rights of freedom, justice, and equality. At the time when power had been usurped away from its rightful leaders, and the faith was under great threat of derailment by the actions of a tyrannical regime adamant to spread corruption in society, one man rose up against the oppression and injustice. He strived to restore freedom, peace, and equality, ideas which the faith perfected, but were undermined by those who hijacked the religion and acted in its name, and were facing the same situation to their brothers. He fought in a short yet bloody battle to revive the heart and soul of the nation. This man put forth all that he had and all that he loved for the sake of his cause. He led a revolution that would one day become a symbol of hope, of the oppressed, and a figure of fear for the oppressors. On the night preceding the great sacrifice, Hussein urged his companions to part his company, and they had already shown their loyalty and obedience, but they remained steadfast and choose to remain. On the plains of Karbala, a desert landscape about 100 kilometers south of the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, Hussein, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, alayhi wa alayhi salam, stood bravely with 72 men, confronted by an army of 30,000, all armed to their teeth. And in those early hours of the afternoon, it took the massive military force little under 4 hours to completely and utterly annihilate, and men were brutally slaughtered. The women and children were then shackled and taken captive, paraded on a humiliating display around the empire. Cruel form of victor's justice was enacted, and there a hard-rendering battle for the sake of righteousness was concluded. However, this tragedy would soon be recalled in the books of history and the everlasting stand against oppression. A narrative which would awaken the minds and hearts of millions. A narrative of a man who stood up against a tyrannical regime with all that he had, became victorious over the sword in the most profound way, and wrote with his pure blood the most glorious of all epics of heroism and sacrifice. One must ask, why? Why? Why did one man enter a small and bloody battle? A battle which he knew would result in a most devastating and brutal end. A battle that would leave his beloved family with no protection in the face of a ruthless and vicious enemy. And why do millions around the globe commemorate a tragedy that took place 14 centuries ago on a scarcely populated desert? People tried to convince Hussein that one person cannot make a difference and that sacrifice is futile. However, Hussein triumphed through tragedy. The tragedy of Hussein is a reminder not only for Muslims but for all mankind to rise up and seek positive change in the face of resignation. The epic of Hussein was no ordinary tragedy, and Hussein was no ordinary revolutionary. For oppressed communities worldwide, the tragedy of Hussein forms a model, a benchmark. Hussein's struggle signifies a lesson that we should never submit to tyranny, oppression, and falsehood. Silence in the face of transgression is synonymous to the acceptance of injustice. And we cannot accept injustice, brothers. Brothers and sisters, we can never accept injustice. Hussein's heroism set a firm standard against despotism forever. It sent a message to all corners of the world that although he was finally massacred in battle, he and his most loyal companions were victorious. It was in the name of Hussein that the oppressive regime he stood against was toppled some 70 years following his death. And it is in the name of Hussein that millions of pilgrims visit the brutal site in Karbala every year to pay their respect. The day of Hussein was martyred on the plains of Karbala was the day he was reborn. For the revolution he inspired set loud and everlasting cry for righteousness and justice has been installed in the hearts of millions for 1,400 years. We today are responsible for a great trust, Hussein's legacy, a treasure which provides for every seeker delightful wisdom and resolute strength. In Hussein's legacy lies the perfect model for every oppressed society in how to overcome the evils of tyranny and oppression. We invite you to make a difference today by joining millions worldwide in commemorating the death of this great hero and the values for which he stood. By commemorating the death of Hussein, we send a message to the world that our stand in defense of righteous values is indeed an everlasting stand. O son of Adam, ponder for a while and ask yourself, where are the kings and the emperors of the world? Where are those who rebuild the ruins, dug the ditches and wells? Where are those who planted trees and set up habitable towns? Where are those who gathered wealth? Where are the tyrants of the world? They had to part with their wealth and properties and leave them reluctantly for others. We too will have the same fate. These are the words of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him. وصل على محمد وآل محمد بأعلى أصواتكم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.